2. We're going to basically keep this slide up for the entire time that we are here. I want to make sure that you are aware of the learning objectives, you have the readings, and as discussed in our Zoom session, your discussion forum number 1, responses are due by the end of this week. So they're due June 5th. So this week's readings focus on leading and managing staff that you have and how you would hire new staff. How would you recruit and retain the staff that you have and to bring in new staff? And what does that look like in the current healthcare climate? So there are laws that guide how you can recruit, how you can interview, and what you can do to hire new staff. It is important that you review and understand those laws. A lot of that is in your chapter 36. So please make sure you take some time to read chapter 36. As a leader, think about what characteristics are necessary to support your division or your entire organization, not just the clinical competencies that you have for your OT staff, for your OT practitioners, and many of you may be leading PTs, speech therapists, and volunteers. So be thinking about those characteristics that you have within your division or your organization to help build that. Chapter 15 tossed around leadership terms such as collaborative, mutual respect, and commitment. As a leader in healthcare, those are the type of characteristics that you should recruit for and the staff that you should be looking to retain. Chapter 36 talks about management tasks to bring in and retain staff. Again, if you need to understand the difference between leadership and management, go back to the beginning of the book so that you can understand the roles and responsibilities of a leader versus a manager. As a manager, you have specific responsibilities in the hiring process. You may be asked to write or revise job openings, job postings, job listings and what that looks like, job descriptions, and they could be for OTAs, OTRs, they could be for OT aides or rehab techs, they could be even for your PTs or your speech therapists. It just kind of depends on what you're doing as a manager in that role. As a manager, you may create onboarding, orientation, or clinical ladder processes. What does that look like? If you don't know what clinical ladder is, make sure that you look again at chapter 36 to understand what is clinical ladder. And chapter 15 talks about how to lead your staff through those processes, how to lead your staff through orientation and onboarding versus creating the processes to get it done. Getting to know each person as a person and not just the employee that works for you, but think about them as they work with you. Understanding their career trajectory and how you and your entire organization can support their career trajectory so that they can support your organization and your division. You want them to understand the mission of your organization, and that's how you can help to get them on board. This is a strengths-based leadership approach. Again, chapter 15 talks about that strengths-based leadership. I personally don't use the word weaknesses. I don't like the word weaknesses. I believe that if you are working in healthcare, you're not weak. You can't be weak if you work in healthcare. You can have areas to improve. We all have areas to improve, but we are not weak people. We can all have deficits, but we are not weak. As a leader, if you model commitment to your staff, they will demonstrate commitment to your division and to your organization. With that said, it is important to hire people with the characteristics and skills that you want and need to keep your organization or your division moving in a positive trajectory. Vision 2025 has leadership as well as a DEI pillar. So if you look back at your AOTA.org, and I believe I posted the AOTA Vision 2025 link to this Moodle section, so make sure you look at that. There's a leadership pillar and there's a DEI pillar, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. The organization states that we are intentionally inclusive. Those of you who live in the DMV, and all of you will do some type of field work or clinical experiences in the DMV, you're getting a unique picture. The DMV or DC, Maryland, and Virginia area is very unique in the OT practitioners that we have here. As you complete that fieldwork, you will be around practitioners who are racially, religious, gender orientation, and sexual identity diverse. Practitioners from all over the world who got their OT degrees and everything from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree to a doctoral level. This, again, is unique. Those of you who choose to go to AOTA conference, you will see a very, very different picture of the profession. Most OT practitioners are white women who come from middle to upper middle class backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds. Chapter 16 in the Vision 2025 presents how the profession wants to be. It wants to be inclusive. It wants the profession to look like the practitioners that we serve. It wants the profession to think like the practitioners that we serve, or at least to have a level of empathy for the patients that we serve. As future leaders and managers in healthcare, think, how can our AOTA Code of Ethics, Vision 2025, and the scope of practice help to make our profession more diverse and inclusive? If you look at the learning objectives for this week, understanding diversity, equity, and inclusion in healthcare as a leader and a manager is one of the learning objectives for this week. Discuss. The intent is that you can discuss promoting and managing diversity using the AOTA Vision 2025. Again, my intent is to get you to crystalline. You've got to get yourself to crystal and fully understand what that means. Chapter 16 speaks to your role in supporting diversity and inclusion. As a leader, are you modeling culturally responsive behaviors and setting a tone to support diversity within your organization? As a manager, are you planning and organizing activities and assessments that ensure that the staff you work with are culturally competent with patients and each other? Do you as an OT value diversity? And most importantly, can you define diversity? There are many different ways that diversity can be defined. I use our student population and speak of them as being very diverse. Where are our students coming from? Where did our students get their undergraduate degrees from? Social class, sexual orientation, gender identity, all of those different things are a part of diversity. So being aware of what is diversity. For most of you, I read your core values that you defined within your discussion forums, and thank you for presenting that. As you respond to your peers this week, think about and review questions number 1 and number 3 on page 161, and review question number 1 on 164. It may help to guide you in thinking about last week's readings to this week's readings, and how do they come together? How do we think about those core values in practicing? How do we think about those core values as leaders, and how do we really put them into practice? Using the words and presenting the words are always great, but how do we actually do the words? How do we actually live our core values? So think about that as you're moving forward. Good luck this week. See y'all online.